Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. We're coming at you with some more Snake Eye Yummy. This time, I'm going to be going first up against Exosister. All the other duels are going to be going second games, but even though this was a going first game, it actually ended up being one of my more back and forth games from this play session. So, we're not just on Snake Eye Yummy, by the way, but this is still the version with Mitsurugi and Azumina in it as well. Here we're going to get hit with the Fuwalos, and obviously this deck is one where playing through the Fuwalos is not really much of an option as far as at least going for our full combo, right? Otherwise we'd give them way too many draws. What we can do, however, is in this scenario, I can make IP Masquerena using Ash plus Poplar, then I can use Poplar's effect to put it in the Spell Trap Zone. Now by sending Poplar from the Spell Trap Zone, I can summon out Diabellstar the Black Witch. I can set Sinful Spoils of Slumber Morion and pass back over to my opponent. Now I still have some follow-up plays going into the next turn once I get there. Here they're going to begin with the Feather Duster on the Morion, that's fine. Next up is Exosister Betrayal. It's going to add Martha to hand as well as Ellis. And they are going to discard the Spirit Monster. Now, Martha's going to activate. I'm going to chain Max C. This does trigger the Betrayal effect, so I really should have activated Max C ideally a little bit sooner. Because now, Betrayal is going to activate and the Exosisters will get to activate because a card will move out of my graveyard. What I can do, though, is I can go IP into SP in response. That way, they're only getting one Exosister Xyz monster here and not both of them. We did draw the Lollipo Yummy, by the way. We'll talk about that a little bit more when it comes to our follow-up turn, but as mentioned, we're going to use Little Knight to banish out the Martha, and then Diabellstar can also revive off of her own effect. We'll just send away the extra Poplar that can also put itself in the Spell Trap Zone to potentially be used with either Magician Souls or the original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye on a follow-up play. Alright, so Martha's going to get banished, Ellis is going to go into Carmail. Now, Carmail gets to activate here. Does it activate on summon? Or no, it doesn't, sorry. It's a in-response effect, right? Oh, it's doing the end phase they set from their deck, Graveyard or Banishment. I see. Okay, so Carmail is going to battle over Little Knight, but that does mean that they're not going to OTK me, which means I am going to get a chance to follow up here. They're going to summon out Irene, set a card, and then pass. So here, I'm going to go into Wanted during the draw phase, adding an extra Diabellstar. I want to do that during the draw phase to play around Droll. I'm also going to get my extra Wanted drawn now, just to see what it is. It ends up being an Ash Blossom. Not the most ideal, but beyond just seeing my extra draw, it does also get the Irene to use her effect a lot earlier. I just don't want to end up in a scenario where, you know, I'm wondering which Exosister monster is about to come out. Now, they are going to have a VODS face down, meaning my Ash Blossom does get some use here. However, that's going to more be useful for baiting out the Carmail effect rather than actually stopping the VODS. So, we are going to have a little bit of an issue here, and that is the fact that we're going to have two Exo monsters on our opponent's board. But also, we can't avoid moving cards out of graveyards forever. I'm not even going to really try to play around it here. I'm just going to let it happen. So they are going to get a banish with the Betrayal, because that's the thing, right? The Betrayal would get a banish no matter what, even if I tried to avoid activating specifically effects that move stuff out of the graveyard. One thing you'll notice, though, is that I'm doing all Snake Eye stuff so far. I have not summoned a single Yummy monster yet. I don't want them to know that I'm on Yummy just yet. I want them to use all of their disruption before I actually just go for a Yummy OTK. So that's what we're doing right now. We're just baiting this all out. Now, the Exosister Jabrine does have a negate effect, and the Michaelis does still have a quick effect banish. And at this point, that's pretty much all we have to worry about. I just need to bait those two effects. So I'm going to go with Magician Souls. I'm going to try to draw a card here. And sure enough, that does actually get them to use the Jabrine negate. And this is why it's so important if you're playing a deck with multiple engines to make sure that you're layering them one at a time when possible, right? Because if I just throw out a Yummy monster here, they definitely would have saved both the negate and the banish for like my Yummy Snatchy, my Mignon, some amount of those cards, right? But now they think I'm desperate because I'm using my Magician Souls to send the Poplar and get a draw, when in reality, I don't care about this at all. I really just want them to use their disruption. All right. Going to send away Diabell Star for Diabell Star and activate. I was really surprised when my opponent used Michaelis here, but completely fine with that. I was thinking that I might have to try to use the Deception to bait it out. But this also works too, because now I can just use Deception to grab Hallowed Azamina, activate, summon out Ilia Sylvia, and now I don't have to worry about if they have a hand trap left, right? But even before the Ilia Sylvia hit the board, my opponent had already used every bit of their onboard disruption. So now that that's all good, I'm just going to summon out my first yummy monster, go into Snatchy, place Mignon, and then I can summon out the other ones here shortly. We're going to tune Snatchy plus the Magician Souls into Cupsy Yummy Way. Now Cupsy Yummy Way gets to activate. We're going to add Cupsy Yummy, add a Marshmallow. I'm just going to dump the Marshmallow. And OTKing through this board with just the attacks would be a little bit difficult. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to revive Marshmallow with a Surprise, then add back, and I'm just going to straight up use Surprise on 2 of my Yummy monsters and then the 2 Defense Mode Xyz monsters, because I don't actually need that many bodies in order to be able to put out an OTK here. I hadn't even used the Mignon effect up to this point, so I decided to go into Link Kribo first. And then we can go Link Kribo plus the Lollipo into the Lollipo Yummy Way. Now, like I was just saying, it doesn't even matter that Snatchy bounced Cupsy, or sorry, that Surprise bounced Cupsy and the Marshmallow, because we still have far more than enough damage for lethal. Even factoring in that the Michaelis can't be destroyed by battle the first time, we still have enough to swing in. I think we even had 1 attack left over here. I don't think the Cupsy Yummy Way or the Lollipo, one of them didn't attack, but there we go. Yeah, like I said, that was a very nice back and forth game against Exo, managing to, excuse me, push through their board and OTK by tricking them into thinking we were only on Snake Eye at first. Again, you gotta layer those engines, super important. Okay, let's check out the next game. Alright, so like I mentioned around the beginning of the first replay, all of these other ones are going to be going second games. So let's see what we got here. Obviously, these all being WCQ games, I'm not able to just look at my opponent's deck list here, but I think I remember this one. Yeah, so this is going to be against DDD. They're actually beginning with the, what is it called? The Dark Spirits Mastery, which looks a little bit weird, isn't that Destiny board support? But remember, it can add any level 8 Dark Fiend, just any level 8 Fiend, yeah, not even Dark, from the deck to hand. Obviously, they would have tried to go for the 0 Doom Queen Maki next, but they already had her. Now, Dark Contract grabs the Kepler, and you'll notice I have not used my Max C yet. I'm definitely going to hold it and wait until they activate an effect that special summons. This will commit them to putting all these resources on board before then having to pass their turn, as opposed to them getting to pass their turn and still be able to do all this stuff on the follow-up play. Now, granted, of course, I'm probably just going to win on my next turn, but at the same time, it definitely pays to be a little bit safe. Alright, so here I found Habakiri, and Mitsurugi is normally a mid-combo engine for us, but since I opened Habakiri here, or rather drew into it with the Max C, we can just go for it right now. This is very useful for not only getting the Murakumo board wipe, but then I can use the Murakumo discard/negate effect as soon as they try to retaliate, before I even go into any of my main engines. I'll even chain block the destruction effect here. My opponent's going to chain Dark Contract with the Eternal Darkness. However, while one's instinct might be to immediately chain Murakumo, if we read here, while you have 2 DDD cards in your Pendulum Zones, your opponent cannot target monsters on the field with spell trap effects, tribute them for a tribute summon, nor use them as materials for a fusion, secret, or Xyz summon. But my opponent does not have a Pendulum Scale out, so they actually cannot use this card's effect. This was definitely just bait. Alright, so we'll add Prayers off the Habakiri. Murakumo is going to pop the monsters. This will trigger the effect of Machinex. Now we're going to use the Murakumo effect. This will force my opponent to get rid of their card in hand, which end up being the Oblivion Ragnarok, I think is what it's called. And then, yeah, as soon as I summon a Yummy monster, they concede, because they know that, like as we saw in that last game, one Yummy monster is all that's needed to set up a very powerful OTK board, thanks to the Mignon and having a ton of Yummy monsters that you'll have access to. So again, layering those engines, and not just in such a way that we're using like one of our more impactful ones first, because again, Mitsurugi is actually one of our smaller engines in this deck. However, I really valued the Murakumo effect specifically, both of them, so that's why we began with that. And we were able to successfully kind of bait out what little interaction our opponent actually had there. So let's take a look at the next going second game. Okay, now if I remember right, both of these going second games are actually each going to be against Mitsurugi, because I'm remembering this play session. We're going to kind of stop both of these Mitsurugi decks in the same manner. Now here we do have the Fulos, but actually more importantly we have the Ash Blossom. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. They're going to begin with prayers. I'm not going to use Ash Blossom on it, and I'm also not going to Ash Blossom the Habakiri. Of course, I would rather Fulos the Habakiri, but even if I didn't have Fulos in my hand, I would still not use Ash Blossom here. You're going to see where I use it here in a second. My Fulos doesn't even matter, because they have their own Ash Blossom, but at the very least, I don't need to play through it anymore. The Ash Blossom they have, that is. Okay, here's Saji, and this is where I'm going to use Ash Blossom. I really think that if you are playing against Mitsurugi and you only have Ash Blossom and no other disruptions, this is the best spot to use it. It stops them from adding the ritual, meaning that they don't really have much to do with the Habakiri in hand unless they already opened an extender, in which case they already had it anyway. They're just going to set one card and then pass here. I'm going to get rid of the Great Purification for the Diabell Star. They're going to imperm. When trying to decide which engine I prefer to start with, I like ones that don't commit to the normal summon, but going second, I'll pretty much use just about any engine before I do Yummy plays. That way, they don't use any negates on like the Snatchy, or they don't like Ghost Ogre the Mignon or something. Ideally, they might hold it anyway, but who knows. Okay, now here, they're going to hit us with both the Maxi and the Fulos. Now, we are on turn 2, so if I wanted, I could go for it, giving them a bunch of draws in the process. Basically, Cupsy would turn into Snatchy, give them 2 draws. Mignon revives, gives them 1. Go into Cupsy anyway, that's 2 more. And yeah, even to set up just that basic amount of plays would already be giving them 5 draws. And I think that's the bare minimum I would need to do to be able to, well, no, I would need at least 2 more summons from hand, right? So I think I would need to give them 7 draws to be able to OTK here. That's a little bit much, I think, but moreover, let's pay attention to their last turn, how they ended it after I ashed the Saji, right? They set a card, activated Vision, drew 2, and then discarded Call by the Grave. The fact that they set a card before they played Vision tells me that they probably didn't have any other plays in hand, right? This is further evidenced by the fact that they discarded Call by the Grave, a card that you would typically value above other quick play spells or Radiant Typhoon cards. So my theory here is that my opponent actually does not have any plays with the last card in hand. And it's more than a theory, because if we go back and look at all the cards in their hand and everything they've used now, we know this last card is Habakiri. Meaning that I can actually pretty safely just pass back to my opponent after battling, and they would have to literally top deck exactly Mitsurugi Ritual here. Obviously they don't have a Saji left, so that wouldn't do it. Kusanagi could add back Saji, but that would take their normal summon. Habakiri wouldn't do anything because they've already used the effect. Mirror wouldn't do anything because they don't have a Mitsurugi Ritual monster in the graveyard. They would have needed to top deck exactly their, probably one of, Mitsurugi Ritual. So that's why I didn't make any more plays into Maxi and Fulos there. And I think that was the correct call. Okay, we got one more going second game. Let's finish off with that. As mentioned before, I'm fairly certain this is another going second game against Mitsurugi. And spoiler alert, we're going to handle this Mitsu player pretty much the exact same way we handled the last one. And that is with the Ash Blossom. Here we have the Droll as well, obviously always great against Mitsurugi. But here they begin with normal summon Saji. I'm 100% going to Ash Blossom that. I actually could have... Here, I think I could have let them add and then Drolled instead, because I don't think... They would have had to have had a really good hand to be able to do anything through Droll. Now here we're going to get hit with the Maxi. But I'm actually glad now that I didn't use this Droll and Lockbird earlier, because I'm going to use it on my own turn here. We're going to normal summon Cupsy anyway, and then link into the Snatchy. Now, the Snatchy effect will activate, they get a draw off Maxi, and I'm going to draw on Lockbird. The main thing this will stop me from doing is getting any searches off of Cupsy Yumiway. However, I think I have enough access to level 1 bodies here, even though we got hit with the Ghost Bell on the Minion. I don't think that's actually going to end up mattering. I'm very sure we can still just OTK. It definitely helps that we have the Diabell Star here as well, because even beyond just being a 2500 attack body herself, the original Sinful Spoils could still be potentially useful. Granted, the Snake Eyes, Ash, and Poplar wouldn't get to activate, like to search, but I could still use their effects to pull out like a Flamberge from deck if I need to. Now here I can use the Cookie Yummy in order to drop the Saji's attack by 1000, and it's also really important that we attack the Saji with exactly the Cookie Yummy, because we revived it off Yumi's Surprise, and the monster summoned off Yumi's Surprise cannot attack directly that turn. However, by dropping the Saji's attack to 0, we can just battle it and effectively get the exact same amount of damage in anyway. And look at that, even with our Jewel and Lockbird stopping us from getting access to more Yummy bodies than we opened with, we were still able to find far more than enough damage to OTK. Didn't even need the Diabell Star for that additional 2500 damage from my hand. Alright, so there's the games, let me show you the deck list, and then we'll finish off. And here is the deck list. It actually has not changed since I initially put it together. Why mess with perfection, right? Well, I mean, as mentioned before, we could trim down to 40 cards if we really wanted to, but I really like being at 44. There's a lot of, especially in our spell trap card lineup, one-ofs that we don't necessarily want to see in our opening hand, and even then some monsters like Saji definitely qualify as that. It's actually part of the reason why we're playing 2 Poplar, is that we always want to have one in deck to be able to search. It's not needed. If you only own one, you could only play one, but really like having 2 Poplar for that reason. I've even considered playing 2 Saji, not necessarily in this deck, but in other Mitsurugi decks for the exact same reason, right? And for the reason that you saw in the replays earlier, that is, if Saji gets negated, not only does that stop the current Mitsurugi combo line 9 times out of 10, it also makes follow-up really difficult, which would, again, be another good reason to have 2 Saji in other Mitsu decks, but not in this one. I think I would always just play the 1 here. I mean, I think I'd always just play 1 in general. I think that's correct, but I've kind of been second-guessing that lately. Anyway. Yeah, this I think is still by far my favorite way to play Snake Eye. There are a lot of good ways to play Yummy right now. Recently posted the, what was it, Radiant Typhoon Tri-Brigade Yummy build. That's still a lot of fun, but I think for me personally, this is definitely still the list for me. And part of the reason I've been making so many videos about it, besides the fact that I just love this deck, is I really want to show through these replays that, like, this is not just mindlessly vomiting out the turn 1 combo line and winning. Granted, if you win the coin flip, that is what's going to happen a lot of the time. But I know a lot of people see, you know, pile decks like this and see what the turn 1 end board can do, and they're like, oh, it's so thoughtless. You just set up 6 negates and then your opponent can't do anything. But the vast majority of games do not play out that way, whether it's because you go second or because your opponent has hand traps or whatever other disruption turn 0 plays on your turn 1. Most games do not end with you setting up the 6 negates plus the banishes and everything else, right? You do still have to know how to play through your opponent's stuff. And I really think that first game in particular against Exosister really highlighted that there is definitely a skill to weaving through your engines and ensuring that you're only giving your opponent exactly as much information as they need, because that will ultimately end up helping you in securing games like that one. But yeah, as far as like deck theory on this list in particular, you can definitely check out the other videos I've posted. At least one of them is going to be linked in the description below. And like I said, you could go down to 40 if you really want to, but I really think this 44 card list is exactly where I want this deck to be right now. That said, if any of you have suggestions, I'm always open to that. A number of the changes I made from Azumina Snake Eye Yummy to this build were based on suggestions from comments, so always open to that. But I think for the time being, that's going to go ahead and do it. So thank you so very much for watching. Super appreciated as always. But we're going to move now to our outro. That way we can thank our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.